Can you believe that for 40 years, a U.S. government-funded study subjected hundreds of African American men to a deadly disease without their knowledge? In today's video, we'll delve deep into the hidden secrets of the Tuskegee Syphilis Study, from deeply rooted racism and deceptive recruitment tactics to the horrifying consequences for the unsuspecting participants and the final revelation. Oh, and stay tuned for the completely shocking glimpses different parts of the story hold. Life-threatening disease and deep-rooted racism. So let's get straight to it. From 1932 till 1972, a very horrendous and absolutely unethical study was conducted about the effects of syphilis on untreated African American men. But what is syphilis? Syphilis is a sneaky disease, often referred to as the great imitator because its symptoms can mimic those of other illnesses. You might experience fever, rashes, or swollen glands, and brush it off as just a passing bug. But in reality, it could be the early signs of syphilis creeping into your system. Initially, syphilis presents itself with lesions, a sort of rash on the genitals, but if left untreated, it can escalate into something far more sinister. Imagine skin growths resembling venereal warts popping up, accompanied by flu-like symptoms that come and go over the course of months. Here's the kicker. Even during what's known as latent syphilis, where symptoms may disappear for years, the disease remains contagious. That's right, you could be walking around feeling perfectly fine, but unknowingly passing on this dangerous infection to others. And if syphilis isn't treated promptly, it can progress to its final stage, which is nothing short of terrifying. Imagine your brain and spinal column under attack, leading to blindness, meningitis, strokes, dementia, and even death. It's a stark reminder of the life-threatening consequences of neglecting this potentially deadly disease. Now, keep the extremity of these illnesses in mind when we talk about this study. Now, this was a world where racism wasn't just a social issue, but deeply ingrained in the very fabric of healthcare, so obviously it impacted the dark history of medicine in the United States. In the days of slavery, medicine was a tool of oppression. Enslaved Black Americans were not seen as patients deserving of care, but rather as objects for experimentation and exploitation. Physicians in the antebellum South rarely extended humane treatment to Black individuals, and the only time they would receive medical attention was only for moments that threatened their labor force or reproductive capabilities. Picture this: physicians of the era saw enslaved Black Americans as little more than guinea pigs, subjecting them to medical experiments without even a whisper of consent. Fields like gynecology flourished on the suffering of Black bodies, with doctors honing their skills through grotesque procedures performed on unwilling subjects. It's a chilling reminder that the foundation of modern medicine was laid upon a bedrock of cruelty and injustice. But the horrors didn't end there. No, they extended deep into the realm of pseudoscience, where racist ideologies were used as an excuse to create a medical fact. Doctors and scientists propagated the myth of biological superiority, falsely claiming that Black individuals were biologically distinct and inherently inferior to their white counterparts. Take, for instance, the misguided beliefs surrounding syphilis. It was believed that syphilis affected white and Black individuals differently, with white brains thought to be more prone to neurological symptoms. And since Black brains were considered less developed, they thought of them as less affected as well. Oh, and they believed that syphilis, the very contagious sexually transmitted disease that can also make the sexual partners of the infected individual and their children sick, affected those of European descent and African descent differently. Because, again, their bodies were not developed enough for that. This absurd notion led to the horrific assumption that Black individuals could harbor syphilis in their brains without experiencing significant complications. Basically, that syphilis would remain dormant in an African American's brain and not cause as much of a problem. So they thought, why not let's keep it that way for as long as possible, just to test theories. And here's where the Tuskegee Syphilis Study enters the stage, offering a chilling glimpse into the depths of medical racism. By the early 1930s, these deeply entrenched racist beliefs laid the groundwork for the Tuskegee Syphilis Study. Researchers saw it as an opportunity to test their misguided theories under the guise of medical research. So in came the Tuskegee Study, observe the natural history of untreated syphilis in Black populations. Now, just take a second and imagine what that means. That means letting someone basically rot away with a very serious disease just to observe natural responses. The worst part is that at the time the study started, penicillin wouldn't be a confirmed treatment for syphilis for over a decade, but there were still recommended treatments for the disease that were withheld. Deception and the disregard of human life. Can you imagine being treated as nothing more than a pawn in a twisted game of medical experimentation? Let's rewind to 1929, when the Rosenwald Fund sought to establish a treatment program in a number of southern states to identify those with syphilis and offer treatment. However, by 1932, their state's government withdrew funds and shifted their focus onto this new controversial study, relying on deceiving people into thinking they were being seen by Rosenwald doctors. Enter the United States Public Health Service's study of untreated syphilis in the Negro male, a name that reeks of sinister intentions. Under the guise of offering medical care and support, 600 men, out of which 399 were already diagnosed with syphilis, enrolled in the study without any knowledge of what actually was going on, or any form of consent. And how did they make these men additionally agree to become a part of this study? Since they were predominantly poor sharecroppers struggling to make ends meet, they were offered a lot of additional incentives. They were offered medical care and burial insurance, and since the black unemployment rate in the South at the time was around 50%, and many of these men needed benefits for themselves and their families, they were also given transportation to and from the study, meals on the days that they were present, and free treatment for minor illnesses and ailments. But here's the kicker. These men were nothing more than pawns in a cruel game of deception. Instead of receiving proper treatment for their condition, they were subjected to a web of lies and manipulation. Told they were suffering from bad blood, a vague term masking the horrors of syphilis, and a local term used to describe a number of different illnesses that resembled anemia and fatigue. So they were led to believe they were receiving medical care when in reality they were being left untreated. So many of these men never even had the liberty of visiting a doctor's office before in their lives, so how would they have known they were being manipulated? To further perpetuate this facade, researchers employed deceptive tactics, offering disguised placebos and injections of mercury and bismuth under the guise of treatment. Meanwhile, lumbar punctures and blood samples were extracted, all in the name of monitoring the progression of the disease. And to add insult to injury, the promise of burial insurance and financial compensation upon death was dangled like a cruel carrot, coercing these men into unwittingly signing away their lives, basically using these poor men as nothing but lab rats to cut open and experiment on. Ethnicity as a means of deception. The term unethical doesn't even begin to scratch the surface of the atrocities committed in the name of science. Not only did researchers fail to explore the alternative theory that white people had worse neurological symptoms than black Americans, or even include white participants in the study, but they also disregarded the strict findings of previous studies advocating for treatment and not letting syphilis go untreated. Adding insult to injury, the broader black community in rural Alabama was also misled about the true nature of the study. Recruited by black doctors, pastors, and community leaders, these men were led to believe that they were participating in a government program aimed at improving community health, basically using their own people against them. There are even figures like Eunice Rivers, a black nurse, who played a role in recruiting subjects, shrouded in controversy, leaving scholars to grapple with questions of complicity and victimhood. To make sure the men continued with the study, Eunice Rivers was one of the first black American women to work for the United States Public Health Service, helping recruit the 600 men into the study, and she was also one of the first black women to ever become a registered nurse. For the full 40 years of the study, Eunice remained as the point of contact with members of the black community, as a way to ensure the trust of those involved. It was Rivers who would both deliver the free medical care offered to the men throughout the duration of the study for minor injuries, as well as providing the participants with the useless medicines and placebos. But her role in the study is doubtlessly controversial, even when the power imbalances are taken into account, made even more difficult to judge by little evidence regarding her mindset, because she could very easily have been forced to do so. Oh, and did we mention the deception during World War II? Researchers feared the results of what would happen if their participants were drafted. Aside from the obvious risk of death associated with war, the draftees would have faced a medical examination, which would have very easily revealed that either they don't have syphilis at all, or that they indeed have syphilis, along with subsequent recommendation to seek treatment. In order to avoid both possibilities, the researchers were able to obtain draft exemptions to ensure the men remained in the study. Unveiling the truth, the Tuskegee Syphilis Study exposed, and its lasting impact. Let's shock you even more now. By 1947, the discovery and widespread use of penicillin as a standard form of care, and even as a cure for syphilis, ought to have meant the men be offered the drug. However, no such offer was made. The United States Public Health Service researchers withheld medication and critical information about it from their subjects, and all the men were kept in the dark, allowing the disease to spread. As a result, there were a lot of horrific effects. Many of the men died, went blind, or experienced severe mental health issues due to the untreated syphilis ravaging their bodies. And since the disease can spread through sex and from mother to fetus, a great number of the men's partners wound up infected with syphilis. When such women fell pregnant, it was obvious that children were to be born with congenital syphilis. 40 women are known to have been infected, and 19 children were born with the disease as a direct result of the researchers' disregard of human life. Oh, and there very well may have been others infected, both partners unaware of the presence of syphilis. The hero who dared to speak out. Peter Buxton was a venereal disease investigator with the United States Public Health Service in the late 1960s, who was struck by the ethical implications of the study's methods. He attempted to have the study shut down on ethical grounds, and in 1969, Buxton took a stand by leaking details of the study to the press, exposing the truth to the public. This set off a firestorm of national outrage when the story hit the headlines. Obviously, shockwaves were set through the medical community, and legal action was taken on behalf of the victims and their families. The groundbreaking lawsuit that was filed on behalf of the study participants resulted in a settlement of over $9 million. Additionally, the U.S. government established the Tuskegee Health Benefit Program to provide free medical services and burial services to the surviving victims and their families. But for many in America, trust in medical research and of doctors has been destroyed. To this day, this experiment is also one of the reasons why some Black Americans are skeptical of doctors and researchers. Many still carry the memory of this deception deep in their bones. And after all, this study ended only 50 years ago, well within living memory for many. So, can you believe the depths of deception and injustice uncovered in the Tuskegee Syphilis Study? From the insidious recruitment tactics to the horrific disregard of Black lives by the U.S. government, we have explored the shocking reality and its lasting impact on trust in medical research. But wait, there's still a lot more tragic secrets in medicinal history left to be unveiled, so do remember to join us again for more disturbing tales. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss out, and make sure to comment below about what other stories you'd like to know.